I'll be there. Downstairs at Fairchild. I'll be there. That, yeah, that'll be too. I was supposed to do a TV spot there. They did it with yeah, and I was supposed to be there. I couldn't fit it in. It's a beautiful space. It is such a beautiful space. Just as long as I don't have to go on that back machine.
Orange tabbies.
Orange hats. And Joy, of course, is here. So it would be just kind of fun. So there you are. Perfect.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Rotary Club of Madison. I'm Charles McClymans, the club president, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all here today. A nice fall day, and it's great to see such a full room of people. Wonderful to have you all here today. Today's meeting is sponsored by Janet Perino and Nick Topitsis. Janet joined our Rotary Club in 2012, and she is a retired advisor to elected officials. She is currently the chair of our program committee. Janet is sponsoring the meeting on behalf of the Literacy Network today. The Literacy Network was founded in 1974 and helps adults in Dane County build skills, reach goals, and connect communities. Nick has been a member since 2016, and he founded PC Name Tag and is retired CEO of that company. Nick is sponsoring the meeting on behalf of the River Food Pantry, and for nearly 20 years, the River Food Pantry is Dane County's busiest food pantry and serves over 2,500 people each week. 1 in 3 are children, and the pantry has already served 36% more households than last year. With community support, the River will continue to work to meet our neighbors' growing need for food. Let's thank Janet and Nick for sponsoring these two wonderful organizations. I love that our members are sponsoring and featuring nonprofits in the community. It's a wonderful, generous way to continue our philanthropy in the community. I also want to share that there's a success story. Remember the Dane County Humane Society was here last week with those beautiful kittens? I could have adopted them all. My 3 cats wouldn't have liked it, but Joy Cardine actually adopted 2 of them. Their names are Juna and Jay, and they're absolutely precious, right? Yes, or you could just look up Joy on Facebook and see lots of cat photos these days. All right, thanks everybody. Remain standing in our opening patriotic song. Ken Yuska will lead us in My Country 'Tis of Thee with Elaine Mishler on keyboard. Okay.
My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. And there my father died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. Wow.
Thank you, Ken. I invite Rick Kiley to come up and introduce today's guest.
Good afternoon, Rotarians, and welcome guests. Guests, I will introduce you, and please stand and remain standing until we've introduced everyone, and then we'll give you our warm Rotary welcome all together. First, we have a visiting Rotarian from the Elmbrook Club near Milwaukee, David Irwin. Frida Bjornsdottir is a guest of Melanie Ramey. Tim Hallock is a guest of the Program Committee. Eva Hitchcock is a guest of Rob Stroud. Nicole Lopez Percopile is a guest of Charles McClymans. We have 4 visiting Rotaract Interact Advisory Committee members, Maya O'Rourke, Alyssa Ortiz, Alec Schabowski, and Camber Walvert. And then Robin Ryan is a guest of Janet Perino. So welcome our guests.
Welcome to all of our guests. Today's moment of gratitude is going to be provided by Valerie Rank. Valerie, come on up here. Valerie has been a member of our club since 2012, and she will soon be retiring as CEO of Habitat for Humanity of Dane County. She is also our current foundation chair, president, right? Foundation president. Come on up, Valerie.
Oh, that's loud. Thank you, Charles. So you probably know that most surveys show that people join organizations because they want to have a business benefit, but they stay because they're grateful for the personal relationships. And I think that's especially true of Rotary. I joined because I was told I had to. So I had a Findorf leader on my board at that time, and he made Tim Stadelman be my mentor. So Tim was the one who brought me to Rotary, and that relationship has lasted more than 10 years, and I'm still grateful to Tim for bringing me to Rotary and helping me on board. Another example of a business and personal intersection is I've loved our dinner and discussion group. How many of you are in the dinner and discussion group? Isn't it fun? I love that. And we have some amazing conversations, and I love some of the intersections I've learned that I have a lot of things in common with a lot of those folks. And one of them is Lynn Roth. And he shared with me that he has an interest in affordable housing. And I'm grateful that Lynn Roth is now on the board where I work. And he and his wife Jean are personal supporters as well. So that's been a wonderful intersection. My last example is Rotary brought me together with Julie Bennett, who I'm sitting by today from St. Vinny's, and Michelle Harris from Goodwill. Is Michelle here today? So those 2 women have been a great, with our restore, we've been a really interesting intersection. And after one chat at Rotary, we said, we should really be looking at how we could work better together. So I had them over for dinner with our spouses, and we bonded, we built trust, and we're talking about how we can work together more in future collaboration. So that was a really cool thing that Rotary did for us. So I'm grateful that Rotary challenges us to do beneficial things to all concerned. Thank you, Charles.
That's great. Thank you for sharing, Valerie. I would now like to ask Janet Perino to come up, and she is this year's Program Committee Chair and today's meeting sponsor. Janet has an announcement for us.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hi there, it's me again. I know it's like a bad penny, but I'll be quick. So I'm Janet Perino, and I am the lucky dog that gets to chair our program committee. This is a 9-member committee that serves 3 years staggered terms, and I'd first like to introduce the members who serve on the committee with me. So please stand if you are here today. And I'm very happy to introduce my colleagues, Terry Anderson, Joy Cardine, new mom, Peter Gray, Gavin Luder, Regina Milner, Ashley Quinto-Powell, Wes Sparkman, and Martha Vukalik-Austin. Let's thank these members for serving on the committee. Great, great, great group of people. So our committee has a tall order. From our membership satisfaction survey, we know that speakers are one of the main reasons that members belong to our club. So our committee takes that very seriously. And we work to bring timely issues while including a variety of topics of most interest to our members. We also have a goal of having at least 20% of our programs include the issue of diversity or that be presented by people of color. I'm proud to say we've exceeded that goal for the past 5 years. So we have annually surveyed our members about program interests with a quick break during COVID. But our program committee, we use that data on what is of interest to our members as we work to schedule speakers. Tomorrow, you will all receive a link to a very, very short Rotary survey on our programs. We're keeping the survey questions the same as past years so that we can watch for trends and any major changes from one year to the next. I also want to remind members that we do have a program suggestion form. There's a link on our website in the downloadable forms section, and you can use it to submit ideas to the group. As Regina reported to us last January, we have only about 42 program slots to fill each year, and we typically receive more than 200 requests every year. That means that less than 1 in 4 ideas actually make it to the podium. So please do not feel rejected if your idea doesn't get taken. There are just so many terrific ideas, and we just run out of weeks to schedule great programs. And it's wonderful to have this embarrassment of riches. So thank you for your attention, and I hope you'll take a few minutes to complete the program survey that will be in your email box tomorrow morning. Thank you very much.
I think I need to invest in some WD-40 for this thing. It's quite loud. Thank you, Janet, and please complete the survey. Be sure to tell the program committee as well what you like, that they're doing a fantastic job. I think we continue to have really high-quality programs every week, so it's a really important part of our club experience. Okay, Dave Bornstein chairs this year's Community Projects Committee, and he has an announcement. Dave?
Thank you, President Charles. On October 11th and 18th, we are sponsoring a book drive with the Madison Reading Project. Oh, sorry. You'll find on your table a yellow flyer that outlines the kind of books that they're seeking. It's essentially targeting toddlers to teens, either new or gently used books. We will have a table outside of the dining room on the 11th and 18th, should you like to bring books to Rotary. If you prefer to buy them online, there's a link on the yellow flyer that you can click on. It'll take you directly to the Madison Reading Project website, give you a choice of 3 vendors to choose from. You can order your book online and it'll ship directly to them. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Steve Goldberg is the chair of this year's Manfred Swarzensky Humanitarian Service Award, and he has an announcement.
Thank you, President Charles. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. It's great to see you. I really hope you feel the same way about me. Because I have 2 dates that I'd like you to circle on your calendar. One is Wednesday, November 8th. The other is Friday, October 6th. November 8th is the date of our luncheon honoring the recipient of the Manfred Swarzensky Humanitarian Service Award. And October 6th, 10 days from now, is the deadline for nominations for this recognition, this award. This award recognizes and honors the life and legacy of Rabbi Manfred Swarzensky, a longtime member of this club and much loved. And he was also my rabbi. And before he became my rabbi, which I know he saw that as a lifetime achievement, he was rabbi of the largest Jewish congregation in Berlin, Germany, highly regarded for his oratory. And in fact, people would come from all over Europe just to hear his sermons at his Berlin synagogue. A synagogue that unfortunately was destroyed and burnt to the ground by the Nazis in 1939. And the rabbi was imprisoned in a concentration camp. And he made his way eventually in 42, I think it was, to Madison, where he became the founding rabbi of Temple Bethel on the west side of town. He was much loved and highly regarded by his fellow clergy in the Madison area. Priests and ministers and other faith leaders considered him Madison's finest Christian. That's how ecumenical he was and how much of a bridge builder he became, both in this club, where he was a member for many years until his death in 1981, as well as in the community. So in 1982, this club established the award in his name. This year is the 42nd year of that award being conferred. And you'll be happy to know that the recipient doesn't need to be Jewish, the recipient doesn't need to be a Rotarian, and as I've said before, the recipient doesn't even have to be as good looking as I am, a low bar. But the recipient does need to be nominated, and with the award comes a $2,500 grant from the Madison Rotary Foundation to be paid to the nonprofit organization designated by the recipient. And the nomination deadline, as I mentioned, is next Friday, a week from this Friday, October 6th. We've already received some fine nominations. We've got time for a few more. And I encourage you to just think about people whose service to this community you admire and consider nominating them for this type of recognition. There are nomination forms on the table for you, as well as accessible online through the Rotary Club website. I look forward to not only receiving those nominations, but honoring the recipient in this room on Wednesday, November 8th. Thanks very much for your help in identifying worthy recipients of the Manfred Swarzensky Humanitarian Award. By recognizing that person, we're not only honoring the values and principles of the rabbi, we're honoring the values and principles of our own Rotary Club in terms of service above self. Thanks for your help.
Thank you, Steve. We appreciate the committee's good work. We have birthdays to celebrate with a bit of humor and wisdom that complements Rotary's mission. We also encourage members to make a gift to our Synergy Scholarship Fund. On September 25th, we have Bill Haight. September 26th, Joyce Bromley. September 26th, Dave Casey. September 27th, Darren Harris, who shares this quote from Pablo Picasso: "It takes a long time to grow young." September 28th, Wendy Melendez. September 29th, Kurt Brink. September 29th, Mark Guter. September 30th, Bill White. And I also understand we have another birthday in the house today, that our speaker, Michael Williamson, is his birthday today. So let's wish all of these Rotarians and our guest speaker today a very happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarians. Happy birthday to you. Yep. We have a couple of members in the news. Oscar Morales will deliver the keynote address at the University of Wisconsin Stephen Point Hispanic Heritage Month event tonight. That was posted in Madison 365 yesterday. And Robert Reed was quoted in the State Journal about the search committee finding a replacement for our wonderful conductor, John DeMaine. And I have one announcement. Tonight we have 32 members signed up for our Culinary Arts Fellowship at Osteria Papavero. It's a wonderful 5-course meal. And from James Beard Award-winning chef Francesco Mangano. I'm going, and I'm really looking forward to it. We had 2 people that had to back out last minute. And so if you're interested, we have 2 spots. They're $129 each. Let Jane or Pat know if you'd like to go. Okay, next on to our program. Excited to have this program here today. Today's speakers joining us are 3 authors of the book Bending Granite. Michael Williamson, who led complex public sector organizations for 41 years, including founding groundbreaking quality initiatives for the City of Madison, the UW-Madison, and the state of North Carolina. He serves on numerous boards where he seeks to make order out of chaos. Dr. Kathleen Paris, who has assisted organizations over the past 30 years to plan for new realities and improve their systems and organizational climate. In addition to a variety of private and public sector organizations in the U.S., she has consulted in Canada, Northern Cyprus, Japan, France, the Virgin Islands, Guam, Switzerland, and the UK. And Tom Mosgaller, who is a change agent by nature and leader by nurture. He served as the City of Madison's Director of Quality and Productivity and as President of the American Society for Quality. A lifelong community organizer, Tom guides people to take ownership and address the inequities around them. As they make their way up to the head table, I want to mention also that we will have copies of their book for sale in the back of the room today. I think you told me it's $12, right? A bargain, right? And and so let's welcome them. Oh, they're also providing 10% to our Madison Rotary Foundation. We look forward to your presentation and to thank you for coming here today. We've made a donation in your honor to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund. Let's welcome our guests.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. David Cooper had been chief of police here in Madison for about 10 years when quality came on the scene. He was pretty skeptical at first about this notion of quality, but he recognized the power of clear purpose, crystal clear purpose. And so he articulated a vision for the police force that had 3 elements to it. The first one was to decentralize the police so that there were police officers in the neighborhoods who knew people and they knew them. They knew the police officers, so decentralization. The second thing, let's see here, okay, was to build a people-oriented organization where education of officers was paramount and where people came on the force with a good amount of education, but they also continued their education once they were a police officer. And then the third thing was to develop a very high capacity for problem-solving, conflict management, and intervention to replace nightsticks and tear gas. And if you were around at the time, you probably remember the tear gas. So that was his vision, and after several, this is what he said. Quality means separating the warrior cops from the guardians of the peace. Just think about how powerful that is, the guardians of the peace. And in his words, he said he wanted a professional police officer working with the community to keep the peace. After several years of transformation, it seemed like things were improving. The crime rate had gone down, and Madison was attracting and keeping some of the most highly educated professional police officers in the whole country. But he wondered, how do we really know for sure? So he requested an independent review of policing in Madison from the National Institute of Justice. And their findings are summed up this way. Surely, the most dramatic finding of this project is that it is possible to bend granite. So quite a kudo. We chose this story to be the opening story in Bending Granite. And when it came to naming our book, there was the perfect title right in front of us, Bending Granite. So Bending Granite is 30 true stories by 30 authors, 30 organizations over 3 decades of all these successful change projects that happened right here in Madison and Dane County. So we are certain that everybody sitting here today knows either the story, the people, or the organization involved in these 30 stories. So thank you so much for inviting us today to share Bending Granite with you. And with that, I will turn it over to Michael.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Williamson. Charles, I want to thank you and all of you for having us here today. And I want to thank you for that great introduction. I wish my wife and my mother had been here. My wife would have enjoyed it, and my mother would have believed it. So as you just heard Kathleen say, 30 authors, 30 organizations over 30 years. You're going to hear a couple of stories today from the public sector and education, but it covered all the sectors in Dane County. organizations that were working to drive change. American Families in that book. We've got Playcon in that book. We got Meriter Hospital, the UW, the Technical College, nonprofits. There's lots of organizations. And on your table, you will find a list of the table of contents and the authors. I encourage you to take a look at that. So the question is, why write this book? Well, one of the things was to capture it historically, because this was an amazing, productive, effective time for organizations in Dane County. But the second thing is that there's a more important reason. And the world today needs change leaders like you to help address some of the complex problems that we're facing in this world. And this book includes fundamental, time-tested quality approaches that transcend time and types of organizations that can help you and others manage change, drive change in your organization. But enough about the background. Let me share a story with you. This is one that I wrote for the book, and it's called Never Waste a Crisis. So things were bad, really bad in 1983. Good working equipment was hard to come by for the city of Madison. Now, if you were the police chief, and you just heard David Cooper referenced here, and you were trying to put officers on the street, but your squad cars were in the city garage broken down, that was a problem. If you were the parks director and it was the rainy season and your gang mowers were unfunctional, that was a problem because the citizens were complaining about the tall grass. The same thing was for the forestry department. It was for the streets department. The list went on and on. So what was the problem? Well, vehicles and equipment were sitting at the city garage down on 1st Street, hopefully home of the future marketplace here and for the city of Madison, for days before a mechanic could even look at them, let alone diagnose what the problem and get them fixed and back on the street. So the light was quickly thrown on the mechanics. I mean, after all, they were union mechanics, and they must be part of the problem, if not all of the problem. So solutions started flying. Fire some of the lazy mechanics and the rest will work harder. Contract out the work to the private sector, because you know the private sector is always more efficient than the public sector. Give them more positions so they can manage the backlog. Lesson number 1. For every complex problem, there's always a simple answer, and it's almost always wrong. Okay, you know how this works. Problems show up in an organization. People start throwing out solutions. I refer to this as grasping at straws. But this time it was different because the mayor, Joe Sensenbrenner, who's sitting right here, had just come back from one of W. Edward Deming's seminars down at the UW, and he'd learned about this thing called TQM, Total Quality Management. And so he knew that there must be a different and a better way to look at this situation than we had been doing for years. But there were no examples of applying these techniques in government. All we had was the translations of Japanese industrial models. Number 2, never waste a crisis. So we decided to apply the new techniques because this was a crisis, and you never waste a crisis. If you want to drive change in an organization, the best way to change the status quo is to seize the crisis that's at hand. Enter faculty from the UW who were equally fascinated with this new management approach, particularly a guy named Bill Hunter, white shirt, black tie, Princeton graduate, but a member of the esteemed UW Statistics Department. Lesson number 3, the 85-15 rule is alive and well. Now, fortunately, Professor Hunter understood that the 85-15 rule was 15% of the opportunities for improvement are in the hands of the workers. 85% is in the hands of management. So he asked to meet the workers where they stood, down at the city garage, in a process that they had virtually no control over. So after the initial meeting, Terry Holmes, the president of the union, responded to Bill Hunter when the professor asked him, will you guys be willing to work with us? And Terry put it to Bill. He said, you're not telling us anything new. We understand what you're saying. The system is broken, and they're blaming us. Do you think this new idea and you can help us? Lesson number 4, in God we trust, All others must bring data. And the data will set you free. So we created our first process improvement team and began to gather some data. Here's what they found. Equipment was being kept online much longer. 21 years average life of a piece of equipment. Just 10 years earlier, it had been 10 years. Vehicles were purchased on low bid. So we had no consistency in the type of vehicle, the manufacturer of the vehicle. And if you wanted to try to buy parts for those, you could not keep those all in inventory. You had to order them. And then the most surprising thing was the bureaucratic process that went on in City Hall. The purchasing process required 28 steps to buy a part, and the largest delay in the process was waiting for approval from the City Comptroller's office. Lesson number 5, tirelessly watch for unnecessary approval steps that slow down processes. Something breaks, new steps are added to ensure that it doesn't happen again. The process gets longer, it gets more cumbersome, and it never gets looked at its entirety. The addition of extra steps and complexity grinds the process down. But with study and data, recommendations were coming forward. And what did they recommend? Well, adopt a more effective replacement schedule. City mechanics should work with its customers to implement a priority system to get the most needed vehicles back on the road first. Purchasing decisions should be delegated to the managers at the garage and not have to go through City Hall. Lesson number 6. The line employees in any process understand it than any manager ever will. Now that may not always be the case, but after all this work, Joe Turner, the garage foreman, quipped, he said, now there's less cussing and more discussing. So aggressively seek understanding of how things really work from those people who work in the process itself. So how did things turn out, you might ask? Well, repair time dropped from 9.5 days to 48 hours. The number of steps to purchase a part went from 28 down to 7. And rather than increasing costs by hiring more mechanics, the annual savings from the new process was $750,000. The First Street Garage team became famous. They made it into Deming's next book. Professor Hunter and Terry Holmes traveled the country talking about the exam. They even went to Ford Motor Company. Imagine that, the private sector learning something from the public sector. And most important, quality management had been birthed in the city of Madison. It was the first governmental body in the country and probably in the world to apply these techniques. What a shame it would have been to waste a crisis. Now, there's an epilogue to this story because the bond between Bill Hunter and the mechanics at the First Street Garage was more than professional. It was personal. So when Bill Hunter died at the much too early age of 49 from cancer, the mechanics requested to pay their special respects, their final respects in a special way. Their request was honored. And before he was buried, Terry Holmes and Joe Turner dug by hand the grave that was to hold Bill Hunter's body. I'm going to turn it over to Tom. He's going to talk with you about another story.
Good afternoon. I just was thinking about the fact that I'm going to share a story that's contemporary. But before I do that, I got to share a very quick piece to what Mike shared. I was in the hallway to the mayor's office, and about 3 months after that project, Terry Holmes came walking down the hall, big guy, you know, your kind of stereotype union guy. He says, Tom, I want to talk to the mayor. And I says, what do you got to talk to him about? And he says, I think we can get this down to 24 hours. You never would have had that happen if we had not done that kind of trust building to get them to respect who we were and the job that Joe did as mayor to allow them to make a difference. So I just had to share that because it was just such a good story. So I'm currently involved in a number of improvement efforts in different kind of settings, like I'm sure you are at your businesses or whatever. But one of them, I think, has real importance to what we're doing today. And I want to emphasize that the kind of thing that's in bending granite is universal and timeless. This could have been done back in Greece. It could be done today and tomorrow, because these are universals for using the scientific method in a very simple way to use data to improve things. One of the things I'm working on is the whole idea of how we're going to keep young teachers in our schools. We are losing a third of our first-year teachers. And we lose about 44% within the first 5 years. You can't run a railroad that way, much less a school. And we put together a thing called Educators Leading the Profession. It's an 8-state effort in the upper Midwest. We pilot tested it now for 2 years. We wrapped around young teachers 3 evidence-based practices that we think can really make a difference in trying to retain young teachers. This is all being followed by a very rigorous research process to collect data about the effectiveness of what we're doing in a quality manner. And the 3 things we're doing, I'll do very quickly. One is making sure that every young teacher has access to best practices online 24/7. They can go in there and look at what good teachers do in other settings. The second thing we do is we give them a curriculum coach. If you're a shop teacher up in Lodi, a young teacher, and you've never taught shop, having access to somebody who's a veteran shop teacher who can help you build your curriculum is a major value to a young teacher. Making sense to you? And the third thing that I've been involved in primarily is making damn sure they got somebody in the school who cares about them. They go into those schools, go into a box, teach. They're not prepared. The educational system is evolving so fast. And we drop kick them into these rooms, and they're oftentimes just left alone. And sometimes they have a so-called mentor, what I call high five in the hallway mentors, which is really not intentionally spending time with that person in a constructive way. Make a long story short, our data just came back and says that we have moved the needle that we can keep young teachers in schools 85% of the time if we can apply those 3 very simple efforts. 1, keep them from being lonely and feeling alone in a place that should be communal, right? Secondly, that they have access to the kind of curriculum coach that can support them. And through that, any time in the middle of the night when they're up crying about what's going on, they can get online and talk to somebody or access best practices. So we are now at a point where the data's back and we're trying to disseminate that kind of effort across the country. Thank you for listening. Yeah, thanks. I need guys like Mike and Catherine to keep me on.
Thanks a village, you know how that.
Yeah. So that's why we brought the book with a whole bunch of us. So many of you are familiar with this, but it is one of the things I'm teaching the young teachers in their classroom. It's the basis of bending granite, which is you have a plan for doing something, right? You want to make a change in the police department, in motor equipment, whatever it might be. You got a plan, you got a hunch, you got an idea. You try it out. You try something. You don't wait for perfection. You try and seek a way that you can do something about it. Then you learn by checking on what happened, what we call the study stage, right? This, by the way, is where I see most organizations don't stop and do the study, right? And as a result, they keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And then finally, the A, the ACT, which is 3 A's. Adopt, adapt, or abandon. It worked. Let's build it into our system. It, needs a little adjustment or adaptation. We can make that. Or, hell, it was a nice try. Let's spin the wheel again. But it's a PDSA cycle. If you build that into the way you think as a leader, it can greatly enhance. And I'm teaching young teachers this so they have some power in their classroom because they feel totally out of control in a system that's much bigger than them. And they need this so they can help manage their classroom, how they relate to parents. They pick the project they want to work on, but they leave that first year knowing they got a powerful tool that they can affect change in their own classroom. Thanks again.
Thanks, Tom. So you've heard several stories, and as you know, there are 30 of them in our book, Bending Granite. What did you hear already this morning? I think we have someone with a microphone who can come and catch your voice. Oh, Susan's got the microphone. Who heard something that kind of grabbed them? Because I have to tell you, another one of our reasons for doing this book was to inspire people to know that you can make change, but there's a good way to do it and a not so great way to do it. Okay. What did you hear?
What's your name? Hands free. Hi, my name is Peter Gray. Thank you. Michael, Kathleen, Tom. Well, Michael, I'm involved with the public market, so I loved hearing a little bit of that back history. Tom, I was particularly grabbed by your story about supporting young teachers. I have a personal angle on this because I'm the father of, I think, the newest young teacher in the Madison Metropolitan School District. Today's my son's third day in the classroom. And I'm curious if the Madison Metropolitan School District has ELP and is doing this, and if not, what advice do you have for young educators? Thank you.
So the pilot test was done in 8 states, so we took 150 young teachers and wrapped these things around, right? But you can help me, you can help us, educators leading the profession, by trying to nudge the school systems to do this. Because their screens are so full of so many things, we're having a hell of a time getting them to appreciate what it's costing them, what we would call the waste of good quality, a young teacher, because they are not thinking about how they get these folk properly cared for when they're new. So we can put our heads together and figure out a strategy. I'd love that, because the answer would be no. We have not applied it, and it should be applied.
Thanks for your question. Do we have any other things that kind of touched you or inspired you or really perked up your interest from what you've heard? Darren, Susan, Darren.
I'll be good. Hi, this is Darren. So good to see you, good friends up here. So I was struck with how personal these stories are, right? And that was a theme that ran through it. And so when you think about data, I don't automatically think, oh, this is going to build trusting relationships. So it's an interesting paradox that you're making a change based on data, and yet you're developing these really close, intimate, lifelong friendships, relationships. So that's what stood out to me.
As a fellow birthday guy today, I think it's an interesting observation, because you think data, it's dry, it's cut, it's boring. I think the distinction is the relationship and asking the people who are doing the work to gather the data. Intrinsically, they think they know what's going on. We as managers rarely do. The further you get up the chain, the less I found that I've learned my 41 years of managing. But asking the people to gather the data and getting that, it actually put something substantive behind the impressions. But in asking was one of the big steps, is that I'm willing to listen to you. You may be working as a grease monkey on a car all day long, but you see things that I will never see. And the data, as I said, will set you free.
By the way, I just got to add to that. So I come out of a background as a community organizer, inner city Chicago, Philadelphia. Got the opportunity to be quality director for the city, right? I didn't come with a lot of statistical and data background, but I came with a deep belief in people at the ground level can make a hell of a change if they're given a chance to share what they know about organizations.
Hi, I'm Brian Chan. Well, I've known Joe here a long time, but until your story, I didn't realize how awesome he was. So I think he deserves a hand. And my question is, in terms of TQM at the city, has that continued on with other mayors? I mean, are we still doing that? I mean, where are we at with the current city process?
So I was there about 16 years, and we moved through from Joe to Sensenbrenner to Bauman, and and Soglin and Soglin. And we held serve, and there's wonderful stories, but we don't have we don't have the time to tell. Paul was a real cynic about this stuff, as you know, any of you know Paul. But he came around and became a real champion of helping us at the front line get this stuff, kept it going. So we held it that long. Now today you can ask your current mayor, because I don't know where we are.
Tom, you want to talk about the city garage today?
Oh, for those of you who have not been to the Madison City Garage, you got to do it. It is literally a world-class facility, and it is built on a lot of the work we did 20 years ago. It is one of the best sustainable motor equipment facilities in the country, and people come from all over the world to learn about this. And you probably don't even know to be proud of it as citizens of this city, but it is a world-class. Go down there, look at the infrastructure you have, and it including the first electric fire truck in the country that is being pilot tested there. So it's a special place. Get down there. The guy who runs it would just beam to have you come, and he'd take you for a walk.
I want to just add that in the police department, part of this effort was there were no women. There were absolutely no women police officers when David Cooper took over. And now they're well represented, as well as members of minority groups. There were no minority officers. So the other thing that remains to this day is the high expectation for education. We have very educated police officers.
My name is Ron Luskin. This question may be directed to Tom, but perhaps others would comment as well. You know, many of us are inspired by this whole concept of total quality management. I know I was inspired by you, Tom. And many of us, as we're trying to bring forth some initiatives, find out that we are encountering institutional resistance. We have perhaps people who are sabotaging the effort. We may have management that says, yeah, but their passive kind of sense of support really doesn't or the support doesn't materialize. It's really rather passive. So I'm wondering, Tom, if you could share with us what you've learned over the past many years about how individuals who want to bring forth change in their organization can meet that institutional resistance.
Ron, I have no idea what the heck you're talking about. Just kidding, man. I've spent my life banging my head on these kind of systems, but I think the thing that I learned as an organizer, which is the importance of one-on-one relationship building, which I think Rotary exemplifies. It starts with really spending time out there. When I came to the city, I didn't know what to do as a quality director. I mean, we had Japanese documents, but we didn't have a lot of other stuff. We were trying to figure it out, and there were no experts really inside. So I went out and did what an organizer did. I'd take a day a week and go out and do one-on-ones with frontline people. I rode on the garbage trucks. I know what it felt like to pick up 550 stops in a day, and one bag would be full of paper and Christmas decorations, and the next one would be bricks. And why we were having injuries to backs. I mean, our refuse pickers, right? I could go down the list of all those kind of experiences. I'd go out and drive the moors because I'm a farm boy. So I like doing that stuff, right? But it was about getting down in what the Japanese call the gemba, getting on the floor, listening to the people, and then making them an offer to sit down and in a constructive way, using data, be able to show that you can be empowered to make a difference in the world. So in a succinct way, Ron, and we did that at Erdman when I was vice president over there. You experienced that with me. We gave it a hell of a run. So thank you.
So somebody told me one time you drive change in some organizations one retirement at a time. And I have lived that. I've been beat with that stick. I'm just telling you. But I will answer the question. One of the things I think that's really important is to get senior men. find out to them what's important in their organization, what's causing them pain, and focus on that. Now, you don't want to take on world hunger, but you don't want to spend all your time and energy trying to figure out where the water cooler ought to be located either, right? But finding out what's important to the organization and their leaders. And I will tell you one other thing. The group that we found in our experiences that's been the most difficult is usually middle management. Because the frontline employees, all of a sudden, they're coming up and talking to the mayor and saying, I think we can do this in 24 hours. They love the attention, and somebody's listening to them. Senior management loves it because they're getting results if they pick the right projects to work on. The middle managers are like, wait a minute, what's my job? I thought they always talk to me, and I talk to senior management. So it's important to pay attention to that group and bring them along and find them new roles and new duties that they can do to help facilitate this work that we talked about.
And if I may add to that, Michael sort of referenced this, but what kind of professional growth are you giving to your middle managers, the ones who are having the hardest time? You know, do they understand what it is to sort of de-scarify the idea of involving people in decision making? But I am a huge fan of pilot projects. You know, a small project that you can get your arms around it, and you have data at the end that show that we did this and we had these kind of positive outcomes. It's kind of the virus model. So that's what I would suggest for organizations, is start out with some pilot projects and see where that goes.
Hey, Jeremiah, so I guess a question to drill in a little bit further to what you were just talking about with retirement being the key to change. So in the literature about management and change, there's sort of this ongoing debate of process versus people, right? If you get the right people in and the bad people out, your processes will get straightened out. If you get good processes, the bad people will leave. So all your stories were kind of process oriented, I think. You change the process and improve things. If you think about all of the stories that you have, is there any sort of generalized insights that you could offer on the question of process versus people and whether one leads to the other, or how you think about that?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that question. Yes, we do have a model, and you see this model actualized in every single one of the stories. And the first one is purpose, crystal clear purpose. We're much better at telling people how to do something than why we're doing it. And purpose can deteriorate very quickly over time. So the first piece of our model is purpose. The second piece is process. And it's what we've been talking about, and having a change process, but realizing that anytime you change something, there's a bunch of processes that are like the wires in the walls you may not even know about at the beginning. So processes, attention to process, and then the last one is attention to people, respectfully asking people and getting used to asking questions. You know, a lot of managers think I should know everything, so I don't think I need to ask anybody anything, but really asking questions of the people, asking them, what are you worried about? We're going over to this new software. What gives you heartburn at night? So it's not either or, and you having all these things together, purpose, processes, and involving people, that is what creates sustainable change. I think we have time for one more, maybe.
Mark Clear. I want to ask about one particular kind of institutional resistance, hey Tom, and that is initiative fatigue. And it seems like schools especially are particularly susceptible to this, and how you fight that particular kind of resistance.
You know, one of the questions I would always ask, and I know what you're talking about, some of that, a lot of that comes from outside the schools, you know, and is mandated. What are we already doing along this line? So maybe it isn't all new. You know, what are we already doing? So that's kind of my answer to it. Do my colleagues have a suggestion for initiative fatigue?
One of the questions I oftentimes ask is, what are we doing now that's working? What should we be doing? But also, what are we doing that we should stop doing? Because these things just pile on. They get more and more, and people get worn down and worn down. So if you're willing to ask that question, what are we doing that we should just stop doing? It's interesting to see what the answers are.
Mr. President, you said you like to keep us on time. We have 2 minutes. Oh, wonderful. We have time for another. Okay, good deal.
Hi, friends. Roberta Gassman. Good to see you. Thank you for your decades of outstanding and important work, and happy birthday, Michael. Tom, to the important issues you raised about what's going on in our schools, and I'm sorry, in our community, we're not participating yet. given COVID and what we've seen since COVID, more isolation, lack of technology due to poverty, all of those factors, it seems the job of being a teacher has gotten harder. What are you seeing in the data from our experience trying to come through COVID and what that tells us about what's ahead?
Well, you're all extremely smart people, so you can see if we're losing a third of our young teachers, what the consequence is going to be 3, 4, 5 years from now. It's just going to keep becoming more and more of an issue in terms of creating a culture in which your kids or grandkids are going to school in a place that there's some predictability and consistency. And so that really becomes an issue. And what I'm trying to do is, you know, if you understand a little bit about the idea of quality, it's about picking off pieces that you can affect and then take other pieces and other pieces. And we are, with the young teachers, if we can make them feel empowered in that classroom and that they have control. And I just got to share a very short story, and I understand our time. But one of the things I'm working with some young teachers on is when they do, they're scared. A lot of them are scared to meet with parents because right now, so much polarization, parents are coming in, some are coming in claw and tooth, right? And these kids are trying to do their best and they're walking into these situations. And so we're pilot testing a very simple thing. I said, why don't you just ask them, tell me why you love your kid. I'd like to share why I love them. And it has transformed the way in which that parent relates to that teacher. Am I making sense on that? Rather than you get 5 minutes and here's my report, the transactional, here's my papers, and we can do all that. But just asking, tell me why you love your kid, you know, what you love about your kid. Transforms the relationship with the teacher and the way in which the conversation occurs with parents to build a bond for that young teacher. So we're doing hundreds of those kind of pilot testing right now and documenting those.
So, Charles, just before you get, I want to just remind people that the book is a point in history, but this work is continuing. On your table, you will find a paper that gives you, we have a website. There's also a bookmark on there. We encourage you to take that. We have a website. We also have podcasts that we're doing where we actually we interview and talk to the people who wrote in the book. So continue to look at that. We're adding new stories to it all the time. And thank you once again for having us here today.
Kathleen, Tom, Michael, thank you for being with us today. Fascinating. Again, the books are for sale, $12, 10% coming back to the Madison Rotary Foundation, so be sure to get one. Join us next week when we will hear from Dr. Kaiping Chen, an assistant professor at UW-Madison. The title of her speech is Artificial Intelligence Unveiled, The Road to Responsible Innovation. So don't miss it. It'll be another great program. Before we leave, please rise and we will recite the Rotary four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Have a great week, everyone. We're adjourned.